Can you, he's got it. Great. Call this budget work session to order. Ms. Meeker, will you take the roll?
Gladly. Ms. Boucher.
Here.
Ms. Campbell.
Here.
Mr. Cotton.
Here.
Ms. Hastings will arrive shortly. Ms. Higgins.
Here.
Mr. Richards will arrive shortly. Ms. Robinson.
Here.
Ms. Walsh.
Here.
And I am here. We have a quorum.
Great. Mr. Dunn, the superintendent, do you have a presentation for us, or?
Yes, we do. Wow, that's,
Yeah, they're really hitting the sound this
can you
time.
hear back there? I think we solved that problem. Yes, we do. A very brief overview because the intent for tonight is to obviously allow the board to discuss all the issues that you've been dealing with for the last 11 sessions. This is session number 12. So, and I'll have a few comments because there's a couple of slides that were questions that were posed to me that I want to just review with you. Just a quick note, though, we have Chantel is back here. She's our math coordinator for elementary. Katie McDonough is also here. She's our coordinator for world language. And really, as a resource to you tonight, if you have questions, because I know those two programs are part of your deliberations, and so they're here to just answer any questions you might have. Okay? So, Jack, when do you want to start?
So this is posted in your folder. And just real quickly, the Q&A, which are the questions that I think were handed out, I've also put them in the presentation. The positions that have already been taken, well, that we presented that are in the budget, and then positions that are not in the budget that were requested. And then other considerations, we did some updates, and just want to discuss some of those as we look at some numbers. And then just the tax rate history, we just put that in there for your review. And then the work sessions, the public information, and non-public if necessary. I put a couple RSAs in there if you do need it. So for the question and answer, I'll let the superintendent go through those. They're on your sheet that I think she handed out.
Yeah, I don't think you need any explanation, but one of the questions was how many folks do we have current in our foreign language department? And remember, this is shared between the two schools, Runlet and the high school. French 1.4, Spanish 3, Latin 1, German 1.4. The next question that was posed was, what does the enrollment look like? And this is the high school enrollment, just so you get an idea about the number of students in the programs at the high school. And you can see most popular is Spanish, with 301 students involved in taking it. We have 5 levels of Spanish. You can see the class sizes, and it's broken up by Spanish 1, 2, 3, 4. Just know that that's the grade level most of the time. Although you can have a 8th grader who takes Spanish, then goes to Spanish 2 when they get to the high school, right? You know that's possible, depending on their accomplishment. And then 4 and 5 is often a collaborative group because of the numbers. Same with German, 5 sections and 135 students, and foreign language in French, 149, and then Latin. Let's not forget Latin. Total 676 students at the high school are taking a world language. I think that's awesome, and especially in a community with so many languages spoken. I just heard you talk about some languages, and so I think it's really awesome that our school district can offer the languages so that youngsters have those opportunities. We also, you asked me about 8th grade language, and these are the 212 students. The class of 8th grade is around 350. Not quite, I'm sorry, hold on a minute. Less than 300.
Yeah, it's about 270.
Yeah, so.
271.
Yeah, and there's that's right, because Katie told me earlier that about 50 students are not taking a language, so it's around 270, 275 8th graders. But 212 are taking a language. So that's a great sign, actually. And then the courses are aligned, obviously, with the high school, the same topics: French, Spanish, German, and Latin. I wanted to give you some more information around the math interventionists. And so I listed out a little description of it. You can read that around the work that they do. And then the tutors by schools, how many are each school. Those, for the most part, at Christa, Beaver, and Broken Ground are paid by Title I, Title I funding. The only one that is not, which is in your operating budget, is Abbott Downing. And you asked the question why, and it's because Abbott Downing is not eligible for Title I. The only school only elementary school that is not eligible for those funding. I believe that Chantel passed around also a worksheet for you just to describe a little bit more about the math interventionist. You can look at that. And then the last question you had was about the nurses and hiring the nurses, and we also have a job description for the school nurse. If you not our school nurse, but our nurse coordinator that helps us with Medicaid billing, provides coverage, and does a lot of the data analysis that we need to do as we look at students all around things like their immunizations and all that. So I put in some information about what it would cost for a half-time nurse versus a full-time nurse, and how we might do that. The question, would a half-time nurse violate the CBA? It wouldn't. You can still be a part-time person and be in the collective bargaining, represented by the collective bargaining agreement. So there would be no violation because you did that. The challenges will always be with the medical nursing services is are we able to find them and to take a job full-time here. I just put in some data around the healthcare coordinator, that person that supervises and helps with all of our nurses. And she's been 57 days, 18 of those days in the nurse's office, and 39 days on a one-to-one. Now those are one-to-one, as you know, are with our students that have medical needs. Could be type 1 diabetes. It could be just extreme medical needs that require somebody to be with them as written in their IEP. I forget anything, John's here too, he can cover that. As you know, nurses fall under student services, so John oversees that. So I hope I captured some of the questions that you had.
Just one question on the nurses. I don't know whether you or Michelle or who, but is there a feeling of whether it'd be easier to find a full-time versus potentially 2 half-time nurses? John?
I'll go for that. I would say full-time. We are, there's not a lot of, we have a sub pool, but they are also subbing in multiple places and currently work at hospitals, so they're not really available as much as we'd like them. Half-time employees have been difficult lately to find. Sometimes we get lucky and we find someone who's a retiree or someone who currently works at a hospital can fill some part-time hours, but to take a shot at it, I'd say full-time is probably a better shot at that.
Okay, thank you.
Could you explain how the half-time position at Runlet currently works, the part-time position? Is it only covered certain days, hours?
She's here half days.
Half days, okay. And that's within staffing guidelines for a school of that size?
Yes.
We're talking nursing staffing guidelines?
Yeah.
So I did a little research, and because I saw the one nurse for 700 students or something like this. So that's only accurate if those are healthy students. So for example, an asthmatic student counts as 3 students. A diabetic student would count as 5 students. So you'd have to go through all of Runlet's students, how many asthmatics, and multiply that number of asthmatics times 3. And a child with like type 1 diabetes, juvenile diabetes, you'd have to multiply that child. I believe it's 5, could be 4. Regardless, that changes the ratio significantly. So it's just one of those things, I looked at it and thought, oh, we're all set, and then I'm thinking of how overstressed our nurses are. So that was, that's pretty easily found in the CDC guidelines around nursing, the ratio, right on.
What guidelines?
I got it on the CDC website. I'll find the link.
Great, thank you.
A nurse gave it to me. But it does change the nature of the ratio of nurse to student.
Did you have your hand up, Ms. Robinson?
No, just putting my glasses on so I can see your faces. I'm blessed with that.
To follow up on the nurses, my understanding is we replaced the nurse floater position with the nurse coordinator position. And she still also serves as the floater, but also can sign off on Medicaid plans. Have there been instances where her floating nurse duties have prevented her from a timely, I'm not sure what the word is I'm looking for, but is she able to balance both, I guess is the question.
Fairly.
It's a difficult question
Yeah.
because it depends on what's going on. Like, for example, when we had, 6 nurses out at once with COVID this year.
Right.
So answer is no during that period of time.
Right.
Nothing got balanced. I think it is during that. There's times when, yes, when it's once a week, twice a week, yes, we can do some of that balance. Is it a difficult job? Yeah. I mean, I think it is because she's balancing a lot of hats in the air all the time, and you're relying on availability of subs that could be available, could not be available. So yes. Is it? The question is, have we gone out of compliance with an IEP because of her? No, that hasn't happened. Have we not been able to meet our needs for what we need for medical billing? We've been able to maintain those. Is it busy and difficult, and sometimes you have to come over after subbing all day? Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Robinson?
Actually, Mr. Fabrizio just answered my question. I just wanted to clarify that the healthcare coordinator was the person in charge of helping us to sort of get Medicaid funding for all of these students, which is an important aspect of our budgeting. Like, Medicaid dollars are really important for making sure student services are met. Yeah, I'm glad that she's been able to maintain that balance, but I'm also curious at what cost.
Right, like skipping lunch or taking extra time.
Yeah,
Maybe it's not
exactly. Staying after hours. Yeah.
One of the questions I had is if we had a permanent sub, what they would be doing if somebody wasn't out. I guess one of the questions I had is if we increase the half-time position at Runlet to full-time, could we then use that person part of the time as a second floater if there is a permanent sub not available?
I would say I wouldn't want to pull her out of the building because then you're decreasing the ratio
Okay.
if you pull her out of the building. We only do that in extreme cases, like, if I need coverage somewhere, we would do that, but it's very rare.
John, I don't think she means to pull the halftime at Runlet. If you added a halftime, could you pull
Additional
that,
person?
an additional, right?
Oh, no, I was actually saying if we took the position we
I thought
had,
someone was
Right.
increasing the one position that's there.
but if we added one half-time position at Runlet and then use that as a second floater,
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just, I mean,
Trying to be creative about it.
I'm trying to be creative because, a full-time, another full-time position as a substitute for 6 people, although they sub for the one-on-ones too, so.
It's about 20 people total that we have in the health.
So you have so that's assuming a lot of absences. And so as we're looking at how to best use dollars, how do we make sure if we're funding a position, we're using it?
Yeah. I happened to run into Lori Anderson on her 57th day. She was covering at Broken Ground, and my kiddo got sent home sick. And I was like, oh, what day is this? And she said 57. And, I just kind of felt for her knowing that. And my daughter was like, she was so nice to me. She, actually talked to me and asked me about my day. So she's, completely focused on what she's doing in that moment, making sure that kiddos are comfortable and seen. So you can't do 2 things at once,
And, I guess my question is, if we have a permanent sub, a permanent floater nurse, and that person is not engaged in any kind of, replacement for somebody out that day, are there things for them to do? Like, I have to imagine that they would get put to work on any given day regardless, right?
It's like a permanent sub-teaching position when if no one's absent. There's a million things that teachers need help with that usually get addressed.
Yeah.
So I know there's a lot of paperwork and documentation that happens. I could see when nobody was out, it would allow a nurse to catch up on all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Or to assist with paperwork, but also who's responsible for like the dental clinic? Do the nurses, are they involved with that, or the eye exams?
We have one person that's in charge of maintaining the dental services, right? She's independent.
Independent, yes.
And the nurses don't coordinate that? I just didn't know if there's other activities that go on that the nurses help to coordinate.
I think they do eye and hearing
They do vision and
screenings.
hearing, yes, correct.
So if they don't have time to do that, then those don't get offered, right? If there's not enough, there's a period of time those weren't offered, right? No?
As far as I know,
Okay.
I have to check into that, I don't know.
Okay. I didn't know if that was other things that this.
Yeah. I mean, we have a ton of medically vulnerable kiddos. Looking at the number of one-to-ones that she's had, I can imagine there won't be a single day where we don't have space for someone to be one-on-one with a student. I don't know, it just feels like there's so much work for everyone to do. It would be very easy to put them in the places where they're needed, you know?
I have a non-nurse related
Yeah,
question.
go-
I don't
go
mean
for
to
it.
pivot if
No.
we want
Do
to keep
it.
talking nurses.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the world language teachers, and we have some people here, and I think a lot of board members could answer these questions too, but since I wasn't involved in the sort of curricular movement on these positions, I'm curious if they're a package deal. If we're going to move forward with this new language program, do we need 2 teachers? Or is there a possibility of only budgeting for 1?
Come on down. I have the 2 best people to answer that question.
Excellent. I had a feeling.
Good evening, Jay Richard, principal at the middle school. I'm fortunate to have Katie here with me. We've dialogued around this, again, just to talk very briefly about the world language program in terms of our goals for that. Well, we'd like to get to a point where we offer a full year world language experience, grades 6 through 8. Currently, we have that in 8th grade. We've made some changes to the schedule for next year, so our 8th graders would have world language every single day, but it would be a little bit different, like every other day, and then we'll have it for 7th grade exploratory. Our goal for next year is to have it in 8th grade every other day for all 8th graders. The same thing for 7th grade, and this would also provide an opportunity for our world language staff to kind of like look at the curriculum because we're expanding it. So instead of having the 7th grade exploratory experience, next year we would have it for just 6th grade, and then the following year we would have 6, 7, and 8, where all of our middle school students would be offered world language, and they would have it every other day. So, in terms of the positions, we've talked about, up to 2 positions with that language because we're in the process right now, and Katie can add a little bit to this. We're in the process of having students do the selections of languages. So Katie and I will kind of collaborate on that. What do we exactly need? We're not exactly sure, but we want to be safe. I would rather say up to 2 teachers and say, instead of saying, maybe 1 teacher and then we really need like 1.3. So anything you'd like to add to that? Or?
I did just want to say one thing on the handout and the slide in regards to the current staffing in the district. It says total in the district at the top, French 1.4, Spanish 3, etc. That's actually the total for the high school. There is separate staffing for Runlet. We are itinerant and go back and forth, but there are additional FTEs. And if you want to write them down, RMS has an additional 0.6 for French, and an additional 1.2 for Spanish, and an additional 0.6 for Latin, and an additional 0.8 for German. And I think I would just add, in regards to the schedule next year, I think it's pretty, it gets a lot done with the staff we have and the time we have in the day. And I do think there's going to be some flexibility in that it won't necessarily be the up to two teachers. Right now, we're kind of looking at who has double certification in the department, who can do 2 languages, and what that would look like next year going back and forth between the 2 schools. So it's a little puzzle.
So our problem is that we have to solve this puzzle by Wednesday, because we have to decide what to budget. And I think there's a lot of support on the board and a lot of interest, but like we have to decide to budget, and it's like, do we add world language? Do we do a math intervention? You know, it's a puzzle for us too. So I think maybe it's not you I'm going to put on the spot. Maybe it's the superintendent. It's like, you know, I think we need an answer on how we could do this. You know, what is the fewest number of people we need to do this correctly?
I would just say we recognize we want to keep credibility with taxpayers and, of course, all of you. We don't want to ask for something that we don't need, but we're not really sure yet. So I wouldn't want to say, and Katie and I have been dialoguing about this since, the early fall. It's like we don't want to say to you that, yeah, we only need 1 and we need a little bit more. And one of the cool things about our world language program, like Katie mentioned, it's, grades 6 through 12, it's one big team. So I imagine we would do this. We'd collaborate together to figure out exactly what we would need in terms of meeting the middle school students' needs for a world language program. And it could come back at maybe 1.8 or 1.7 or 1.3. It just... We want to be honest and transparent about that.
I'm recommending that, given that this is a new program, the data is still not solid. I'm recommending that we put 1 full-time position into the middle school and work with Katie and Jay to be able to provide an exploratory program for 6th grade. Based on the numbers that are taking it, especially when you look at some of the numbers, like in Latin, in German, the numbers are small. And if in fact we move the German class in 8th grade to the high school to fill that 9th grade, do you remember that issue with the 9th grade German? So my proposal to Dr. Herbert was to move the kids from Runlet over to the high school to take their German class with a level 1 German with the kids over at the high school, which is not unusual, by the way. You've done that before, both in language and as math. And so that will take a little bit of the pressure off of the concerns that Jay has. And just remind you that last year, and I think you saw that in my contingency, I supported some additional money for foreign language because they needed it. And so I would contend to you that we have a little bit of buffer, you have a little wiggle room, but we get our foot in the door, we start the program at the middle school, and let's start with 1. With all due respect to my wonderful middle school principal. I mean, you need to make a decision. It's Monday night, and you have to set yourself. And we're going to show you some other ways in which you might be able to afford this too, without impacting taxes.
Could you I know there were some additional copies of this. Could you pass it out to the people who weren't here?
No, it's okay. It's not just me.
I think these.
Loose end didn't get them, I guess.
Who else didn't get it? Oh, sorry.
May I ask a question, and maybe I apologize if it's on the sheet, but if we are going to start in 6th grade, and I think that's, or 7th grade, whichever you want to say, full, and which is exploratory, is the goal to just end in like 11th grade or 10th grade? Or are we going to offer, say, Spanish 6 and 7?
Yeah, so right now, the program would be, it's every other day, and so it wouldn't necessarily be that they're getting 3 years, kind of traditional years, over the 3 years of middle school. That said, we have had a lot of discussions in world language about what that would mean, because we don't want students to just have to stop in 11th grade. And some of the solutions we've done before in the past when students have worked past level 5 are independent studies or ELOs. So that could be one option depending on how many students want to. But yeah, that's definitely a question 5 years from now if we've got kids doing, even if it's every other day, full years in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. When they get to 12th grade, it is going to be a different situation.
Okay, thank you.
They could start a second language.
Yeah. Katie, when you were here and you spoke to the instructional committee, you did provide us with some studies that proved out the benefits of foreign language at early ages, but actually leading to better outcomes for kiddos in school.
Yeah.
Is that something that you'd be able to make available to us again? Because I know the instructional committee got access to that, but I think it might be helpful for the rest of the crew to be able to see, the long-term benefit of having language in middle school.
Yeah, is there an email? I could share the presentation and all the links.
Yeah, that would
if-
be,
Yeah, what's-
with Kathleen can get it to us, or Jack
Okay,
can get it
great.
to us, I'm sure. I think that would be helpful for deliberative purposes. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Other foreign language questions?
Nope. That was really helpful, though. Thank you very much.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Does that mean that you have a, you're gonna make a decision tonight about that? Remember now, whatever decisions you make, then Jack and I have to put that in the budget, and we have to present a budget to you on Wednesday.
Well, I
So-
have a question about that.
All right, go
Jack,
ahead.
do you have your fancy-dancy spreadsheet where we can be plugging things in and taking them out? You're a master of that.
McDonald's is out of business. I don't.
That's
Sorry.
okay. No, that's all right. It's something that I was really hoping
Yeah.
we'd have because bottom line for all of us is
Yeah.
what's going to be the tax impact on all of this.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think we can have all kinds of ideas about the things that we want, but we really need to see the final number
Right.
before we make any decisions. I think everybody's in agreement as far as that's concerned. I was really hoping you could do your magic.
I don't have the Happy Meal one, the one you're talking about.
That's okay.
The one where it had like buttons and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. That was rad.
No, but
Give me-
you can,
But
you can update the general numbers and the impact on
Yeah,
the
yeah.
tax rate as we go.
Yeah,
Right.
I
Yeah.
can.
So we could do that Wednesday if we say, if I make a motion to take one position out and add two others, you're gonna be able to do the
Yeah.
counts.
There's nothing Jack can't do.
Are you looking for a motion for tonight for us to add an instruction, a
Well, I
world language
think
teacher?
we've gotta have a number so that we can provide you with tax impact and what's the increase in the budget, and then what does that increase mean in terms of taxes? That's all, that's what, meaning, I know that you want the magic over here, but I'm kinda trying to get you to make some decisions tonight.
Ms. Meeker?
So if we have a proposal tonight, if we land as a group on additions and subtractions, can we recess for any amount of time for you to do that math and bring it back to us tonight?
Yes.
Okay. How long
Thank
would you
you.
need for a recess? Like 10 minutes, an hour? Like, what's our expectation?
Depends on how complicated we are,
Yeah.
Right.
probably.
Let's see what kind of magic.
We're gonna make it.
And then I'll let you know what magic I
Yeah.
can. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would be more than willing to stay a little longer tonight
Okay.
if it means that we can have a tax impact number tonight so that we all feel good when we leave here.
Yeah.
And then that will give you time to think about it
Yeah.
between
Yeah.
now and Wednesday, and should you wanna do a little bit more, then you'll be able to do that. If I don't have that tonight, I'm worried that Wednesday will be really difficult
Yeah.
for you.
Then I have more questions.
Not for us, we can do it, but for you.
Does that feel like we move into asking questions about?
Yes, so Ms. Meeker had a question?
Yes, I have questions about the math interventionists. The first question is a clarification question. If we decide not to move forward with any of the math interventionists, are these employees that are then absorbed back into the system? Are they contracted teachers?
Yes.
So in so doing, does that impact the budget just by bringing them back on as teachers? Or there's just
Well-
no budgetary change?
Well, it may in a way that, when you bring them back, remember, the people that replace them may not be, at the same level in terms of the salary. So you may have some, right?
Yeah, so if you have a staff member they've been put back into their entitlement under this budget. So if they go into the coach position, it's gonna be higher than that 117, but the replacement or the hire could be lower than that. So that's
Okay.
what
So-
that would be.
It might be a
Yeah.
a slight impact in
A
salary.
slight increase. So if we have no math interventionists and everyone returns to where they used to be,
Which is what this budget is.
so then nothing will change in terms of the tax rate
Correct.
that has been posted. Okay,
Correct.
thank you for that.
Does everybody understand that?
Yeah.
Ms. Hastings?
I've got a couple of questions regarding the math interventionists. We had asked for some data that would show us the impact of the math interventionists on the testing.
Or the math
On
Coaches.
the math coaches,
Yeah.
yes. And I don't think we've seen that.
So the data we do have is from 4th grade through 9th grade who's using iReady. And the instructional committee meeting got canceled last week, and we had that presentation, but absent an explanation of it. I don't think it would be a useful, it's difficult without explaining the data points. But there is overall an increase, in some cases, stronger than others, in the iReady data. Whether it's the second year that the kids are using the iReady, it's really hard to tease out. Chantel, do you want to talk a little bit more about some of the anecdotal data that you've collected?
Hi, so I do have some data that I can share around students increasing in the iReady data, and I can pull that up if we need to see that. And we also have, and I had shared with you in a previous meeting, data that we've collected internally as far as, like, for instance, looking at student computation data as far as one of our goals this year, and looking at different pockets within our schools where we've seen kids really making progress on those long-term skills. One of the major things that our coaches are working on is how to keep those ongoing skills moving while instruction moves forward. And so we do have computation data and internal data where we collect how students were doing in the beginning and how they've grown across all of our schools and all of our grade levels. I shared a little piece of that in a previous meeting, and I have more like that I can share. And then I also do have that iReady data that Krista Mers was coming to share. Is that one of the things that I think is really difficult is, as we're looking at data and the impact of coaches, we do know that a lot of the work that our coaches have been doing in the schools is both for the impact of our students and our teachers. Our number one goal is student achievement. So regardless if we're calling them coaches or interventionists, the number one goal is that they're here to help us increase student achievement. Things that have been huge as far as having those coaches in our buildings have been really increasing that reflective practice. The collaborative inquiry, moving professional development. We know that research tells us that standalone PD is not as effective as embedded PD in increasing that collective inquiry. Having that collaborative culture within our schools and teachers not working in such isolation, that's been a massive impact of those coaches within our schools. And it's hard to look at just the SAS data, that iReady data, and determine what exactly is due to the coaches alone. So I can share with you, students are absolutely growing as far as iReady. As far, the SAS data, we know we have room to grow for sure. So we know that schools and districts across our nation are looking at what are school-wide models that are going to increase student achievement. And we know that the research tells us it is that collaborative and collective work about our practices. Our teachers' content knowledge is very strong in this district. So it's not just teaching them how to do the math, and I know that sometimes that's a misconception. It's not just that quick fix, but our students every year present new challenges. Our students change as we get them. And so we're really looking at, that idea of the best way to approach intervention is really the power to avoid them having to have intervention in the first place. How do we really look at instruction, look at the students teachers have in front of them, and determine how can they all access this grade level tier 1 instruction? So that's been the major work that they've been doing within the schools. Some data, and this probably wouldn't be data in your eyes, but some things that we've seen that is huge is teachers are working in collaborative teams and looking at work on a daily basis. They're analyzing assessment data. They're making in-the-moment changes to what they're doing in the classroom based on student needs.
But that happens without coaching too, doesn't it?
So that happens within teams, absolutely.
It happens in teams, it happens every other week when you have your collaboration meetings. It happens in grade level meetings.
Absolutely, and we have very collaborative staff in this district. We absolutely do. The power of having these, more facilitators and coaches working within those buildings is that they're then able to take that and do that work together. So being able to get in the classrooms and really help see that through. And then, as far as the student facing, being able to pull those students and work with them and determine how can instruction meet their needs a little bit closer.
So my follow-up on that, if I just could, is we don't have in this budget math coaches for each building. And it sounds like what you're describing happens in each building with their math coach. So I'm wondering how equitable it is for the schools that will not have math coaches in their buildings.
That's a great question. So we've talked a lot about that, and there are absolutely possible limitations. For instance, the relationships has been a huge piece that have really grown across the schools, being able to get into all those classrooms. It is an opportunity to continue building that culture of collaboration across the district, continuing to see that vertical alignment and district-wide. We know that we're looking at a new program for next year. So that district-wide implementation of the new curricula, the strategies, the tools, we would have to look at specific math schedules across, if schools are shared, being able to look across the schools, look at what the scheduling of when people teach math is, and really create a very strategic schedule based on, specific days or even specific weeks, being able to sustain those relationships, that continued growth. There would have to be time set aside in the schedule to really work intensely with tutors and with data to determine the largest areas of need. So it would have to be very strategic.
So sorry, but this sounds like the coach's role that we have now, not an interventionist with students role that you're describing. So, part of, I think, my struggle has been there's different definitions of this position based on what people think the board wants to hear, I feel like. So you described, sort of a coach, and then we've been hearing more of a tutor with a little bit of helping implement the new math curriculum.
So I think that's an important question because I've struggled and gone both ways on, that you've asked a great question. So what's the difference between how you've defined an interventionist and a coach? One thing that we do know, again, as part of being, these are individuals with very strong content knowledge. So as far as being an interventionist, we don't want it to be just about pulling out and taking students out of the classroom to do interventions. We really want it to be, how do we get all students to access their Tier 1 instruction? So one thing that I see in that switch over of roles, I think one of your questions was what percentage of the time would be student-facing? I would answer at least 80% of that time because I think that student-facing, just working with students, what I would like to see is that it's more flexible. So it's not just they're providing PD, they're working with teachers, but through that interventionist role, it might be intervention through shared teaching practices, getting into the classrooms and working together to think, how can these students access this instruction better? How can we work together to come up with how instruction is more accessible, which is a way of providing that intervention. It can be done in small groups, both within the classroom and without. And then working one-on-one in collaborative teams with both teachers and students, again, as you saw in that description, as really about making our mathematics accessible to all students. So I do see a combination of both, but really with the focus of how do we increase student achievement. It should be about the data, about student need, and how can we get more students to access what they need to. Did that answer it?
Can I just build on that?
Yes.
Just very briefly to build on that a little bit. The person who's at the middle school, the math interventionist who's at the middle school has always been, once moved into this position, was referred to as an interventionist because this person was going to be working with teachers and students really directly, working more directly with students than the coaching process. The nice thing is that they've always had the iReady data, and just over the last year and a half, we now have 5th grade and 4th grade iReady data. And we can look at those, what we call the yellow students, I hate to refer to them as that, but we can use that data to actually target this group of students that really is kind of a cusp student. And we can put the interventionist on those students, just as they do at Runlet Middle School, to say, how can we boost that group up? And then look at and continue to collect that data. What's been missing from the district, in my opinion, is having that data that is universal screening that helps to make these decisions. And now a year and a half in, we're all becoming much more comfortable with looking at specific student data, classroom data, school-wide data. And so to your point, Brenda, our last meeting that we just finished our mid-year data, in every single building, there was improvement in math based on using that tool. It'd be great to push that tool down to the other grades so that we have something that's less fuzzy, sort of intuitive. But I think this is a perfect time, since we have that tool, that we can target those specific students and push the teachers in to work with them and to help the teachers work with those students as well, to help build some knowledge, but whatever the learning gap might be. I hope that helps.
Ms. Robinson?
Yeah, sure, thank you. And I think one of the things that hasn't been touched on quite yet is that our math coaches, we decided to fund with Title II funds, which really limits their ability to interact with students, whereas the interventionists would be coming out of the general fund, which means they would have much more access to be available to students. Well, my question is going to be similar to what we posed to Katie and Principal Richard, is we're feeling a bit like our hands are tied budgetarily. So if you, I'm going to put you a little bit in the hot seat. If you were to only be able to choose potentially having one interventionist, where do you believe they would be most effective in the district?
I'm going to give that one to you, Kim.
And can I
She has to
actually,
show up in schools tomorrow.
my question actually piggybacks on that question. Can I ask it in like a conjunction kind of a way?
Yeah.
That if there was only one math interventionist, is it possible to envision that that person would be sort of a cross-school person rather than a dedicated school person?
So I'll tell you.
Second Chantel.
Yes.
So I would say that at middle school, you have to have a certain certification. You have to have that math certification to be able to work with the Runlet Middle School. So not all the interventionists K through 5 would qualify as persons that could go to the upper schools. I would say, and I brought this up before, that in fairness to Runlet Middle School, the high school has department heads, and K through 5 have access to Chantel, although she has been pushing into 6th grade as well because of her certification, that I would highly advocate if we could only choose one, that person would be at Runlet Middle School.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Hastings?
I know in the past, we had some issues with the math interventionist or coaches being used as substitutes, especially at the middle school. I'm wondering, is that still happening?
I can't speak for every school and the day-to-day, so
I'm wondering if Jay can, he would know.
When you need a body.
Yeah, good evening again. So that's a great question. I can tell you the reality is we do at times. So when we're short-staffed, I'll talk with my math interventionist / coach, and we'll schedule them to be in a math class because it's, they're a certified math teacher, and I'd rather have that with the kids. Far from ideal, but that is a reality.
Can Can you give us an idea of how many times a year so far this year?
That's a really good question. I could get that data. I want to say probably maybe 10 to 12, maybe 15 times, which seems like a lot, but they have done that. So I have some newer teachers too at the middle school where, you know, if they're out, again, we just have strategically talked with our interventionist / coach. We have a conversation about it depending on what they're doing. But again, I would prefer to have a certified math teacher in there in sub when possible. Not ideal because then they're missing out on some of their other responsibilities. But we have done it for sure. So.
Thanks.
More math interventionist conversation?
I just have the question, you mentioned you're saying, helping all the people on the cusp. Yeah, when I read through the goal, it also includes those who are accelerated. Are we just skipping that with these 3 people as opposed to having 5?
It would be a holistic approach, but the interventionist would be working with the CUSP students. And if a particular educator needed some more resources for extensions, that would happen. That's the other beauty of iReady, is it has built-in interventions and extensions for students so that they can independently access some enrichment through the program.
Okay.
I can also say I wrote that in because I think that does speak to the focus on increasing the effectiveness of classroom instruction, meeting the needs of all students. So as we're thinking about instruction in the classroom, and again, this is not speaking to teachers not being able to do this on their own, but that collaboration about that wide range of learners we have in our room. When we're working together to think about how to meet the needs of our most struggling kids, we also have to work together to make sure that same instruction meets the needs of those kids who need more.
And that's where I feel some of this is lost in these needs for cuts. So I think it's important that we be reminded of that.
But I'm going to ask you, because you have to go to classes next time. So if you're in my position and I have to decide, do I add 3 math interventionists and increase class size in 4th and 5th grade by 4 people, which is the better choice?
That's a loaded question.
Yeah.
Well, it is, what I'm asking you is your opinion on a decision that we will have to make.
Everything is a balance, right? And I think probably the principals would, I can't predict what they would say, but I think that there's a balance. I think that the impact of this model with the interventionist is superb, and we see it with the reading specialists. Every building has a reading specialist.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And I just think that it's highly impactful. I care greatly about class sizes as well.
I know, I was giving you a very hard question, but it's the hard question that we're going to have to sit here and struggle with, so I just, you have more educational input than I have some financial background, but I just wanted your input, please.
Well, I'm also a systems person, right? So I'm looking at the whole system and looking at, we care deeply about student achievement, really, really care deeply about it.
Thank you.
I understand that, and I feel horrible. You guys are on the hot seat tonight because we're going to be right after you. And I caution against comparing the math coaches to reading specialists. Reading specialists have gone back to school for a specific degree in order to be a reading specialist. These math coaches have not, and that's why we can't call them math specialists. They are very qualified, don't get me wrong, I don't mean to insinuate, but it's a completely different job, it's a completely different degree and training. And I don't want us to get in the habit of comparing them to reading specialists. They are not.
Thank you.
I would be remiss if I didn't respond, Jim, to your question. And, I think I've used this before. Long-term study on class size done in Tennessee, and it was very clear. Keep your class sizes reasonable at the lower level. That's your primary schools, but there was no substantial difference in class size when you went up 4, 5, and 6 and up above. So just saying, that's what the research reports. So when you talk about 3 or 4 more kids, just understand that the research is supportive in that sense. But again, every class is different, so it's really hard, and it's hard. I think Brenda brought that up. We have students that are, there's a lot of demands right now from our kids.
No, thank you. And if we could, we would fund all of the very important and, positive positions. We just may not have that luxury.
So, if we're ready to
headed there.
move to class sizes, I mean, there are 4 grades and sections, that if we reduced a class, we would be still at the mid-range of our guidelines, and in keeping with what we would have for class sizes at some of the other elementary schools. So 3rd grade at Broken Ground, if we went to 5 classes, that would put us at 21.6. In the 5th grade at Broken Ground, if we went to 4, it would put us at 21.5, where at Beaver Meadow, we're at 22. 2nd grade at Millbrook, if we went to 4, we'd be at 21.5. And if we went to 5 in 1st grade, we'd be at 19.6, which is about where we would be at Beaver Meadow in 1st grade. So I'm just going to put that out there, that those 4 positions plus the SRO at Runlet would be worth about $575,000 if we're doing the $117,000 average.
Along those lines, and if we didn't want to go to 3rd grade, Krista McCullough's 5th grade, if we went to 2, would put them at 23.5.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but
No.
didn't you indicate, Kathleen, that we were having
That would put them at
4 people
25.
All right,
retiring?
That's correct,
25.
4.
They'd be,
They would be around that, okay. And then it depends on how close we want to shave it,
yeah.
Not that close.
not to desire, but I'm leaning towards the higher grades than the lower grades. I'm a little concerned about 2nd.
And I believe the last conversation we had about this is that I think the board could be discussing number of positions that we just don't fill after certain individuals retire, but that we leave it to our superintendent and staff to determine where best to take those out, rather than us having to make that call.
Does the enrollment report that was shared with us, it cuts out 4 teachers, or doesn't replace 4 teachers already? And we're looking, am I right in assuming you're looking at cutting another 4?
I think it was only 1.
I saw
Only one,
3 at
BMS.
Millbrook
No.
and 1 at Beaver Meadow.
But
We've only taken,
We didn't take those yet. The only ones we took was the Beaver Meadow position. It's already been taken, and it reflects in your budget decrease, if you will. The rest of them, as Pam laid out, and certainly Chuck and I have been doing this, we haven't taken that yet.
So the numbers on this sheet have,
Our proposals.
are, okay, but not with lost teachers,
Say that again?
not with lost teachers. So when I
We
look
haven't lost
at,
anybody
So
yet.
if you look,
when I'm looking at Beaver Meadow, it says they've lost, I've got 1 teacher down.
yep,
That number reflects that 1 teacher down?
yeah, see under kindergarten, see the gray box of a 2? We moved that from 3 to 2. That's the vacancy that we took. Correct.
Okay, and so at
All the-
Millbrook, I'm not looking at a loss of 3 teachers there with this proposal?
No, they were reallocated because of Krista McCullough.
So you took them from Millbrook and
Yeah.
put them at Kristen McCullough?
Right, it gets a little, let me tell you why. Because remember, last year, I had to put a teacher into Krista because of increased enrollment in kindergarten. That came out of quote-unquote the contingency, which is transferred into salaries. But, so, one of those cuts at Beaver Meadow, Millbrook, covers that in the budget, that's all. We have
they
to make
got
sure
moved
it's
around.
funded, right.
Okay.
It's a place where it's funded, and we have to make sure
Because
we.
contingency, if they come out of contingencies, they're 1 year only, and they're eliminated at the end,
We
unless
don't
they're
carry
performing.
that.
Yeah, we don't carry it.
Anything I did in contingencies is not carry. Because it's just one-shot money.
So,
I would agree with Kara's comment that I think, I'm supportive of cutting 4 positions, but I believe we should leave it up to the administration as to where those positions are and what classrooms allocations happen. But if we've got 4 people retiring, it's clear to me that depending on the numbers you want to look at, we could potentially lose 10 to 15 positions if we wanted to cut people and still be within the required class sizes or the expected class sizes. I'm not supporting that, but I think it is reasonable to support the 4 positions not being refilled.
And-
Mr. Richards?
Yes, and I would be in agreement with that type of an approach with regards to the fact that I think we can get down, and I don't necessarily want to increase class sizes to the max. I believe Ms. Higgins remembers when we were touching maxes a few years ago. None of us really wanted to do that. But heading towards that target middle number, that's what I would encourage you to do. That is the class size objectives, and I think I would be in agreement with Ms. Meeker's approach.
Okay.
Without,
So I guess then the next question is, are we actually eliminating 4 positions? Are we saying, and the next step is, are we adding 4 different types of other positions or any other positions? Or we could do this as separate
So-
motions if people want.
May
We ought to
I
do separate
actually-
Yeah,
motions.
if you want to make them.
oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
I actually, I have drafted a proposal, and I'm hoping it could be something that we could work from. That's a list of adding, subtracting, and it includes the language teachers, a floater nurse, interventionist, safety resource officer, and potential teaching positions. It's the one I had sent to you, Jack, early on. And I'm wondering, because there are so many positions we're talking about, if it might be easier just to see them laid out. I could make it a motion as a proposal.
have a
Why
quick
don't you
question.
send it around and before you do that? Yes, Ms.
If
Megan.
we just listed the additions and how much that would cost, like everything, every position that's been presented with a number, that would be helpful for me as well. If we just cut nothing, took what we've been given, but added, what is that number? And how would that number affect what taxpayers would pay? Does that make,
Well, we didn't quite get through the rest of our PowerPoints.
Oh, do you have more?
But that is one of them that talks about those positions that are staffed but not budgeted. I mean, I'm looking at one right now, $587,000 for your math interventionist and your world language. In addition, what a floater nurse would be. So I can tell you that it would be almost $700,000. But that's a slide, right? If you look up now, you'll see it.
so don't I know when to ask the right questions?
And remember,
Must
the
have been doing this for a
SRO,
while.
it just,
Yeah.
and I don't mean to take any.
No, please.
The SRO is already in the budget, so you're removing that from the budget. It's not like,
It's not in this list.
it's not, yeah,
Right.
this is extra.
Right,
Go ahead,
got
Jack.
it.
That's everything that's in, okay? In and out, I should say.
Yeah.
And then this is the stuff that was requested for discussion, but not in the budget.
Got it.
Can you get up?
Yeah, do you want a copy
Kara's?
of it?
We're gonna put yours up
You're
on
gonna
the
put it up.
screen too.
It's changed slightly.
Well,
And the
Just-
4 retired teachers, how much, if we just don't replace those positions, how much is that?
Well, they're 117,545, because we budget the vacancy each. So you
Right.
times that by 4.
So
Should I use new math or math I learned in
Yeah, right.
1967?
1967.
use the old
We
school,
have a
old school
math
math.
person here.
Old school math.
The answer should
That
be the
gets you about
same,
four
just-
So it should be-
you should
sixty-seven.
just be able to get quicker with these.
So it should be 470, 180 for those four.
That's what I got. Look, right here. Mrs. Rice, grade 2. I was a smarty.
You still
Okay.
are a smarty, Barb.
Oh, I'm a smarty, all right. So 470, 180.
And that's for the 4 teachers that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to do big math here.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to figure out which.
So,
Where is it? How
without
can it happen on
replacing
your
those
screen?
teachers and then looking at what's been added, then it wouldn't be $700,000.
Is that
worth.
it?
It would be.
It is, yeah. And if it were an Excel sheet, we could toggle it. But this is just an email that I had sent to Jack and Kathleen about checking math, about my thoughts on what I would propose for the budget. It is certainly not to prevent us from having an open discussion about more or less, but this is just where I've been heading. As trying to keep it as close to the posted budget as possible, and based on community feedback and district need, this is what I see as a good package deal. It includes 2 world language teachers, though, so I think we have a little wiggle room there. I'm very interested in the floater nurse, more so than I am adding a second nurse at Runlet. I thought we could just free up our healthcare coordinator and then take her advice on what we should do moving forward. I thought that a math interventionist at Runlet would be the most appropriate. I don't want to necessarily get rid of them all, but I understand the budgetary crunch around math coaches especially. That was a big discussion last year. And we were sort of getting in our heads that that was going to go away. So how did we keep a little bit of that going? I have removed the safety resource officer from the budget. I see it as a want, not a need, especially at a time when we are really crunched on what we need. And I have, in this proposal, allowed 2 of the retirements to just vacate, not necessarily 4, because I feel like I don't necessarily want to force us off a cliff in terms of teaching positions. Something that is in here that's just to play around with is, you'll see below on your sheet, is the 10-plus year history of the contingency fund that we award to the superintendent for any given fiscal year. This upcoming year, it's at 368. It includes enough for 2 teachers, a program assistant, an educational assistant, and a tutor. Given that we're having a hard enough time finding tutors as it is, I thought maybe we could do a 1-year investment by pulling a little bit of that contingency fund to account for perhaps a floater nurse that we weren't expecting on having to budget for. And that is where I leave you.
Well, look at you.
This is wonderful.
Just you remember now, the contingency is not the superintendent's slush fund. I want to be very clear about
That's
that.
true,
I've said
that's
that
true.
before.
Yes.
I mean, this is clearly dedicated to what the positions that Kara described, and it's important. It gives you that little bit of flexibility.
Yes, and it's certainly not something that has to be on the table. I just wanted to bring it up.
I actually think this year I think currently we still have $90,000, so I use it very carefully. It was left in this year's so far. I mean, we're in March. I don't anticipate anything crazy happening between now and June, but June 12th.
Just a question, Pam. I really appreciate Kara doing this, but I think on a couple of these points, we talked about some other options. So procedurally, I'd feel better if we went piece by piece. And
I think that's fine. We don't yet have any motions on the table, so if someone would like to make a motion to kick us off, we can.
well, I'll make a motion on the world language teachers that we agree to fund 1 world language teacher for Runlet.
And moved by Mr. Cotton, seconded by Ms. Campbell, a motion to add 1 language teacher at Runlet. Is there further discussion?
I just have, I would like to know, or at least for us as a group of decision makers, to sort of establish where we feel comfortable setting the tax rate. Like, is there a number we really don't want to go over? Because it's one thing to have all of these hypotheticals, but do we have like a line in the sand? I know as close to the proposed budget as possible, but like, what does that mean? Like, can we create some definitions for ourselves? I know we're not all gonna agree on what that looks like, but is it 3%? Is it 4%? Is it 5%? Like, where do we feel uncomfortable is what I'm trying to suss out.
I would like to get in sort of to where we've been, or a little under the sort of budget that we've been talking about. It's my personal goal? I don't know if others have. Mr.
My
Ritchie?
personal goal would be to go under 3%. Doesn't
I
have to
mean,
be far
same,
under, but under.
Same. Yeah, ideally.
No, we're
Mr.
just over now.
We'll be able to give you, Sarah, we'll be able to do that. As you make your motions and you tell us what's in there. Now, I know, we have a world language, we know what that's gonna cost, right?
Right.
117, right? So now we can continue to take the posted budget, minus anything that you're gonna take out of that.
All right.
And we'll have a number for you,
I'm typing in as you voting.
All right.
okay?
Okay, great. Thank
Was
you.
there anything else in the presentation that you wanted to show us
Sure.
that you think would be impactful before we start making
Yeah.
motions?
So
Thank you for
we've
opening
had
up
the
the discussion.
positions. Let me just bring up the slide. Sorry about that. So, as you know, I did this other considerations as we were for our public hearing, but we went back and did a little bit of updating. As you know, negotiations is still going on. But we did get, now that enrollments are done at the high school, I did ask Anna to pull the enrollments. So they are confirming that we have 25 students that have enrolled out of 45. So we put in the budget 160, assuming 10, 11, and 12, which are your 9, 10, 11 stay, you're at 153 instead of 160. So that revenue is gonna be 129,000 lower. Okay, and we don't know, there could be other movements still, so, I just wanna put that on your radar. I mentioned adequacy, but I don't know if they'll do something mid-budget or anything, but that's why that's on there. As we talk about, capital improvements, facilities and maintenance, that'll be for future discussion as it relates to bonds and, other things. We get into the transportation, so right now we have the special ed out of district and homeless. And currently that's 900,000 over budget projected, there's still encumbrances in there, but, we just had 2 move-ins that John made me aware of last Friday. So that number could be as high as 1.5 million. Now, you have a special ed reserve that is healthy because we put all that money away in October, but we're gonna have to figure out something with this transportation, because it's just not a sustainable model. It's either that or we gotta budget a lot more. And this is the second year in a row, I kinda thought things might start to simmer down post-COVID, but no, if anything,
It's
it's
never
getting
going
worse.
back, really.
No. Okay, so I just wanted to make you aware of that. And then obviously the food service program. You've had several discussions about that, on where to go with that. Operationally, it has some debt, but the meal debt, and that cannot be carried forward. That has to be paid. So, I anticipate having to come to you to increase the amount we're gonna need to cover for debt if we don't get it collected. Obviously, the grants, we won't know till the end. And then your unassigned fund balance, I had put at a high to 2.8 million, considering we came in at 4.3 last year because of unfilled jobs and reimbursements from ESSER. Normally, I try to keep it between that, but I'm trying to give a little bit more back to lower that tax rate. I'm still hoping I can hit that number, but if I don't, you're gonna know in July. And then we gotta figure out, where does that come from? Where do we offset it from?
Yeah.
If it doesn't, okay?
Most of these things, though, are not things that we can really address between now and Wednesday. So, I mean,
Not unless you
good to
wanna.
good to keep them in mind,
Yep.
but
Yep.
Well, we knew that you would have down the road, have to look at some of these things, July, August, September, and when you set your tax rate for October.
I mean, Deerfield I look at, I know that number right now, but what could it be? Could there be more people that come in? I don't know. It's up to you if you want to change it or just go with it and then it'll.
Yeah, I talked to the
We'll fix it.
superintendent, actually this morning, and there are 47 students in 8th grade, one of her lower classes. Of those 47, 25 are coming to Concord, 20 to Co-Brown, and 2 wherever, I'm not sure where they're going. And Patty was of the sense that we might see a few more change between now and September, so kind of left it at that. I was at least pleased that more students chose Concord than Co-Brown.
And then obviously the city, state, and federal.
Yeah.
But just to put it on your radar when I come back in either June, July, August, but definitely September, October. There'll be a couple little inputs in there, but, you know, once you set this budget and hire those positions, you're gonna have them, so.
So just keep playing the lottery, right?
Well, it is up to 1.1 billion.
I
so
know.
It's up to you if you wanna try that. I don't know where that is in the lines here, but. And then I just put a little tax rate history going back to 96. I think you've seen this before, and then kind of what the average has been on the local and the state rate for the last 10 years. So when you look at it combined, 1.21 has been the average.
Yeah.
So, and not too bad, but as you can see, the local up 2, state down 2.89. So, and I think we highlighted this in our opening presentation, when you look at what the rate was back in 1999 versus what it is now, it's up evenly $2. Meanwhile, the state rate is down a little under $5. So, just seems to get shifted more and more to local. Okay, and obviously the work session schedule, that's tonight's, it's all posted, public information, board members, the budget, and that's all I have, just so you're aware. I'll let you move on with your business.
So there's still a motion on the table.
Yes, there is.
There you go, move on.
So is there discussion, more discussion about adding a foreign language teacher?
I think creating more opportunity for kiddos to access a broader selection of courses is always good practice, especially knowing the positive impacts of foreign language study on all kinds of things, including math, including math proficiency. I think adding the one is a great compromise as far as what we're capable of doing this year.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes.
I move to add a floater nurse, 1.
I second.
Moved by Mr. Cotton, seconded by Ms. Boucher. Motion to add 1 floater nurse to the district. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
1, aye.
Opposed by Ms. Hastings. Any abstentions? Motion passes 8-1. Additional motions. I will move that we remove this school resource officer from the budget for the Rutland Middle School.
Second.
Second, moved by Ms. Walsh, seconded by Ms. Robinson. Is there any discussion?
Yes, sorry.
You go first, huh?
Okay, I was just gonna say, I hear the community who are concerned about safety, and, you know, we didn't talk at all about violence, and now, you know, right now, I think Ms. Higgins described how teachers get in there and are not trained for that. However, I don't think this is the right time to add the SRO, although I do see the benefits, potential benefits that haven't been discussed, and I see the potential pitfalls as well. I just don't think this is the right time.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. Ms. Higgins?
I think I feel the same way, having spent so much time in a neighborhood school that doesn't exist anymore and watching children facilitate and learn to have really good trusting relationships with law enforcement officers. I feel more positive about the SROs than some people do. But I've also not had anyone email me begging for the SRO. We have to listen to people that reach out to us. I would ask that we keep it in our minds as a topic of conversation. I think our principal wouldn't have asked for one if he didn't see a good reason to have one. And I just want him to know that sometimes being on the board means you don't really vote the way you want, but I absolutely understand why an SRO could be a great addition to the middle school. But I agree, I think right now it wouldn't make sense.
And just to reiterate, when we were presented with the option of the SRO, we were told that that individual would not be involved in behavioral interactions whatsoever, that that was not their purpose. So as far as talking about in-classroom violence or behavioral outbursts, what I was under the impression was that that position was not to be used to address those issues anyway. So if that is a topic that we want to take up at another time, I don't think it was part of this conversation.
It didn't get represented, I don't believe, but I think that, you know, an active shooter, yeah, they're gonna be involved in that. Someone with, that is, you know, we have someone that is leading to violence where one child is being violently accosted. I think you're gonna see that happen, and you're gonna be an intervention. Someone's gonna get in there if the person has, you know, there's a whole lot of scenarios with that. I don't think we talked about it. I don't think we have enough data at this point. You know, currently that is being handled by the Concord Police on a call. But I agree that I have not seen, I agree with Ms. Higgins, I haven't seen a lot of evidence that it's a problem right now. But I think it's something that, you know, in the future we'll have to listen to and discuss. I don't think we have all the information now, so, but I think for the status quo, it's okay right now.
I would agree, and I would agree that I felt like the need for the position wasn't well defined, or the job description, and that there are better people in the building to do a lot of it. Obviously, the worse the active shooter. In terms of, you know, building relationships with young people and the police department having more continuity in those relationships, I would encourage the city to think about how it approaches juvenile interactions differently within its own staff and its own units, and they are certainly welcome to collaborate with us. Just don't think we need to add a paid position to the school district to do that. Ms. Boucher?
Or why do we, as a school district, have to pay for that position too? I think that's important. But I do have to somewhat agree with Jim that I think the public was overwhelmingly not in favor of this position. So that's something I have to listen to. However, I do think that there's more there that we have not discussed of what may be going on and what do the teachers feel. We didn't hear from staff at Runlet. I'd love to hear from them. I'd love to hear more from the students. And I don't think the presentation really represented really what a reason why that we should vote to include it.
Further discussion? Seeing none, the motion on the table is to remove the position from the budget. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. We're on a roll. Does anyone have
I'm
any?
going to make a motion that we add 2 math interventionists, one at Runlet and one for the lower grades. 2.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, moved by Mr. Cotton, seconded by Ms. Boucher. Discussion.
I just can't see, I guess, how that's gonna be valuable.
Right, the element one split.
One
yeah.
for,
I think, yeah, I would
all the
agree. I think
elementary
if we're not gonna support a broader coverage of elementary school, we just don't.
Right.
We have one, I can see the need at Runlet. I think that's a pretty obvious way to go. Not that there isn't need at the elementary schools, but I would agree, you're gonna have this person that's fragmented here, there, and everywhere. I don't think it makes sense coming as an educator.
And we do revisit our budget every year. It's not to say that we can't add math interventionists in future iterations of our budget. I mean, we've sort of reiterated to folks that have come to us with, like, it might have to be baby steps getting to where we fully want to be. I think I have to agree with Brenda and Barb on, like, we don't want to spread one individual so thin that they don't wind up being effective in their role. So should we just add the one initially for Runlet, boost that population, and then hopefully next year, you know, adequacy will change. We're down adequacy this year by a significant number. And I think that's something the public maybe, it's difficult to understand how state funding works because it's a complicated formula. But I think it's important for folks to know that we are looking at a deficit on state support this year, and that's a lot of the reason why we have to be so picky about what we're able to provide to the student body.
And I guess I would suggest that maybe we don't fund any math interventionists this year, and see what happens. You know, this was never intended to be a job that, and it kept coming back to us, and we kept saying, no, we weren't going to come back to this. And for the last 3 or 4 years, we've come back to it every year, and it's sort of become it's a new position almost that we've created. And I'm interested to see what happens if we go a year without the math interventionist and see what happens. Maybe we come back and we say, you know what, we need them in every school. And we take a look at it then. Or maybe we see, well, you know what, it worked okay.
I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Hey, who was the second?
Got us talking,
I
though,
was.
didn't
Are you okay to?
I just want to say something to that. Can I?
Okay, well, so we had a motion to withdraw the motion.
Oh, so no, I don't want to say anything.
Well,
to that.
it's a question for you. You were the second.
You were the second.
Do you want to withdraw?
You have to agree.
I just wanted to say something. Oh, but we can't do that because the motion. It's
You could
null.
just go ahead.
It's null right now.
No, you would
You would have to
agree
agree
to withdraw the motion as the second.
You seconded it.
And then you can say whatever you want.
Yeah, so say yes or say
Oh,
no.
and then I could
Yeah.
I motion to withdraw.
Okay.
I'll withdraw it. But what I would like to say now,
Yes.
can I say it?
Yes.
That we're implementing a new math curriculum. So I sat in that classroom, I watched the math coach work. So I can agree with Brenda. I think across the board, I think it makes most sense to have one in every school. Is that the most effective? Are we spreading someone too thin? My concern is if there has to be a specialist for that new math curriculum to support.
We have a very adept specialist with Chantal. She works very closely. I can tell you as an elementary school teacher, new programs come.
All the time.
And you learn them. And that's what we've always done without math coaches. And Chantal works very closely with the teachers in the schools, bi-weekly, anytime they need help. You can call her, she rolls out all the program for you, everything is done for the same, everybody gets the same thing with Chantal doing it. And
She's spread too thin.
I think I heard Mr. Richards.
don't know.
I think Mr. Richards had his hand up.
All I was going to say is that it seems to me, having been involved with this over the years, is that we addressed an issue with our COVID situation, and ever since then, we've been tweaking to try to hang on, but people just don't want to let go of this. And I understand, I really want our math to improve, but I'm kind of leaning towards Ms. Hastings in that maybe we are better off to just withdraw it and then have them create what we want instead of trying to mold math coach into something to just hang on to it.
if it's an assistant for Chantal, then great. We come to us with a proposal for that. Let's figure out what she needs, or what we need as a district, rather than.
I certainly understand that point. The one thing I would say is that we should not think that we are done addressing COVID. Those kids are way behind, and all of them have effects. The early kids who are in early elementary school, I think, continue to struggle, as we can see in our scores. But I share your concern that we have a problem, but we don't really have the solution to it.
Right.
And we tried that last year with agreeing to put more money into tutors and then not being able to find tutors. But I'm not sure that one or two people address that real need either. I think I saw, did you have your hand up, Ms. Robinson?
I had a hand up because when we were discussing this last budget cycle, we did say, like, this is a one and done. We didn't want to cliff out from ESSER funding so badly that we left educators in a lurch. And that's, you know, when teachers tell me I need something, I mean, they're our front lines. I'm not going to doubt that need. And part of the contingency of having 5, which got improved into 6 math coaches, is that we really did want to warn everyone, like, this is your tail. This is the last time we're going to be able to do this. It really is so that we were lessening the blow of losing those support people. Because that's really, they provided space for educators to collaborate. They helped with PD. Like, it was a valuable position. But, you know, ESSER funds disappeared. We're not the only school that are dealing with this very drastic drop-off of staff. The reality is, you know, is this so essential at, say, the middle school level that not having it could be detrimental to kiddos' outcomes? And I guess that's a question for you, Kim. Do you think that, you know, this is such an essential role that not having it would mean that we see our kiddos be not as well off? I know it's sort of like a wonky question to ask, but I don't know. What do you? I don't want to put you in the hot seat, but you're the expert. You're the expert, so.
Is it okay if I comment while there's a motion on the table?
There isn't a motion on the
No,
table.
there isn't.
So go ahead.
Help yourself. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Sarah. So I think it's an equity issue that we have, as I said, we have some people who are guiding math at the high school as math department persons. Runlet is going to be unique yet next year because they're going to be using a new resource called Open Up. That's for algebra. That aligns with the algebra instruction at the high school. In the past, they were using a different program. So that alignment is going to be important. And 6th grade is going to have a new program. So for me, is it essential? Is it something that we absolutely need? No. But is it something that addresses an equity gap? Yes.
Okay. That's a great answer. Thank you.
I guess the one thing that at some point we have to decide where Runlet goes in between the elementary and the high school, and who's responsible for coordinating what.
Well, it'll always be both, kind of.
Yes,
I mean, you can't-
but I think we need to have that more clearly defined.
It has been both, though. We've had the high school folks down working with the middle school math teachers, and Graham Chowder, who has a background in math, and in addition to Rebecca Del Baroni, both of them math backgrounds, have been working with the middle school. So we've been doing that. And the nice part I like about the new program is that it's a nice transition, 5-6. So 6th graders will be engaged in the new math program. So those are really defined transitions that have been important to you. You've talked a lot about that, and we too, in the district, have been concerned about it. So, hey, I got to make one other comment though. You put into the budget a couple years ago Haggerty and Foundations. Remember, you expanded it. We got more phonics, more vocabulary, all of that kind of work, and we've seen really great results in our reading scores, and they've across the board have really, and we'll get you that data, the last round of iReady. And I'm envisioning the same thing will hold true with this new math program that has really good results and strong, what works best, which is a federal kind of a organization that looks at materials and looks at evidence-based materials, and that's ranked as one of the top materials programs for mathematics. So I'm hopeful around that. So you've made effort in reading, and I think it's time to do some things in math. And I know you're going to bring in a new curriculum, and the only thing I'd ask you to consider is the middle school. I mean, they really have been struggling, and Chantel can help us with it, as Brenda described. If you have to make some hard decisions, I'm just trying to give you some options here.
So could I make the motion?
Yes.
Make a motion to add a math interventionist at Runlet?
I'll second that.
Moved by Ms. Robinson, second by Mr. Richards. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any, any abstentions? Motion passes 8-1.
Hey, stand your ground,
I'm
right?
cranky today,
No,
apparently.
you had,
No.
you have very valid reasons for making those decisions.
Serious business.
Yeah.
Must be the boot. Serious.
Must be the boot.
And I mean, this is really just to give us the ability to see what the end result is, right? We can change this still tonight, we can change it Wednesday, so I really just wanna see what the final results are for us, like what's the tax impact in the end? Being, like, finding the middle ground for everything, does it get us where we need to go? And if it doesn't, then yeah, then we have to pull other things.
I really hope, though, that if this math position goes through for the middle school, that the person focuses on math and isn't used as a substitute.
Yeah.
I really,
Say that again, Brenda.
I
I'm
really
sorry.
hope the person isn't used as a substitute.
I mean, we have such an issue in the district, like, my kiddos have experienced having 5 different subs in one day. We don't have.
Yep. Then you put an administrator and you put somebody else
Well,
in.
though,
Yeah.
a math specialist subbing in a math class, that's
If
better.
that's the case.
Well,
yes,
and that's what Mr.
absolutely.
Richards said.
Yes,
is-
and I have no reason
Yeah,
not
yeah.
to believe that.
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah,
Bouchard
but to
said.
put them into a language class or a science
Yes,
class
yes.
is not a best use of their certifications,
right.
for sure.
Mr. Cotton,
I'm going to make a motion to remove four teaching positions.
second. Moved by Mr. Cotton, seconded by Ms. Walsh. Is there discussion?
Since we haven't approved a lot of the, or 1 versus 2 foreign language teachers, 1 versus 3 math interventionists, no SRO, I'm wondering if we can not keep, either keep all 4 or keep at least 2. Like, I think we've made some great no thank yous here, which could, my concern is always when you don't replace a position and then you have an influx in registrations that now you're rehiring someone late anyway. And I just don't think that we need to. That's just we've made some no thank yous, and I think that balances it out.
Yeah, I do agree with that, because especially we're not filling interventionist in the lower grades, and as we've heard, right, lower grades having the smaller classes.
Right, is important.
That's important, so.
If I could, just my point on this is, we've got 4 people who are retiring. I don't, on top of that, we've got class sizes which theoretically would support up to 10 positions at least being removed. I don't see the point from a taxpayer's point of view of why are you leaving vacant positions that you don't need.
Well, I guess I would say that you get more bang for your buck. You're replacing expensive teachers with less expensive teachers because they're new. They will not cost as much as a veteran teacher. And again, the research says one of the best indicators of success in student achievement is lower class sizes. I'm thinking if you've got a class that you've got to do your reading groups in an elementary school and you've got 25 kids, that's a lot harder to do your reading groups because you could have kids that don't know their letters right through Excel. And how do you meet those needs? Whereas if you have 17 kids, that's at least one group smaller, maybe 2. And I just think that we're going to get more bang for our buck with smaller class sizes. But I understand.
And we're going to be spending $117,000 for each one of those positions.
Which we've cut in other places. We could be saving more. I
We
see
could
what you're
be
saying.
saving more.
I see what you're
I
saving.
think the taxpayer appreciates saving
We
more.
could be saving more, but I don't know that they'll appreciate it if we come back next year and we have to hire 8 teachers.
Well, but that would be offset by increased revenue from the state. I mean, our enrollment is down. Some of this, I think, is a little bit of a COVID bump, and we're gonna see it go, but if we delay hiring a teacher this year, that we can save that money this year, and then if we need the teacher next year, or that is why we have the contingency funds as well, if there's a sudden jump in enrollment. I mean, I think with those numbers, you're talking about class sizes that would be roughly the same at all the different schools. It's not, right now you're ending with these couple of schools get really small class sizes and a couple of schools get bigger class sizes, but
That's how it's been though.
but we'd still be within our, and we'd still have some of those fluctuation, but we'd still be within the middle range of our
policy.
And, we may need to look at our policy, but we do have that policy and we have followed it other years. Ms. Meeker?
I would say, in the same way that we were talking about tapering off math coaches, I feel like just because we can reduce teachers doesn't mean we necessarily should if there is a more tapered, reasonable approach that is multi-year in planning. I have to imagine it is felt, by our teachers to all of a sudden have 4 fewer teachers. And so to me, that matters. I understand that that's not a monetary decision. It's more of a long-term planning decision.
But I feel like the number of classes we have in each grade in each school can fluctuate year to year depending on the number of kids. It's not static every
Agreed.
year. So just saying this is this year's numbers.
Could be fewer next year.
It could be fewer next year, it could be more the year after. I'm sorry, Mr. Richards.
No, that's okay. I was just gonna join the discussion. I think we need at least 2 of those positions to even break even right now. But I actually say 3 because Mr. Dunn just told us of a reduction of $129,000 of revenue. So I would support the 4 teacher motion that Mr. Cotton made. And that's all I'll say.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely not an ideal situation, but I'd much rather move through attrition than, be cutting positions that are active. I think that is a balanced way to look at how we can responsibly reduce class size. I'm still very torn on the motion because I understand the importance of small class sizes. That's also small class sizes are a luxury to a lot of districts. I mean, if we look at surrounding towns, we're in a very fortunate position, even with a decrease in state funding, even with a decrease in enrollment from Deerfield. There are folks around us who flatline their budget and they still have a 6% plus increase. There are schools with hundreds of thousands of dollars over that they have to now start lopping off whole programs. Amherst, for example, is $800,000 over budget right now. And they have to tease apart. We're deciding to put new positions in schools. We're actually very fortunate in our district to be able to have these conversations. And we may not always be fortunate. So I'm weighing, do we take all 4 out and do a service to the taxpayer, keep things low because it's not always going to be that way, or do we find the middle ground and do 2? Do we do the 3? I'm still waffling, and I'm sorry, I'm not landing anywhere.
May I?
Yes,
Oh.
go ahead. No, sorry.
Thank you.
doing math.
You have well insulated yourself over time. And I look at it with the contingency as obviously a position a lot of districts don't have contingencies.
Right.
Okay, so you've insulated yourself for those unanticipated events like increased enrollment. But the second thing that you have is that you have October. And I can come to you between now and, let's say, July, when we're seeing the kids registered. And if I have to come back to you because of those increases in enrollments, you can be rest assured that I come back to you to ask for those positions, because technically you have until October to set this all in stone, if you will. So
That's what we forget.
I'm just saying, you do have the ability as a board, you've well insulated yourself, and you have a lot of ways in which you can make sure you have reasonable taxes, reasonable increases, but also addressing the needs of kids. It's just, it happens here, and it doesn't always happen everywhere else, because their budgets are set now in stone, March 15th, whenever they voted.
It does require 7 votes to make any changes
Yes, it does.
in
I
October.
failed to mention that. Jack reminded me of that. It was 7 votes, so if you do, everybody has to come.
One other thing on your
Yes, Mr.
motion, you're talking about reducing 4. Remember, we've already taken one, the Beaver Meadow vacancy. It's already in there, so there's
That would be
4
fine.
retirements,
So it's
but we
3
took
more.
the 1.
Oh.
So
Three
it's
more.
Three
So
three
friendly
more.
amendment to the motion on the
Yeah.
floor that it is 3 removals instead of 4.
We're essentially not renewing retirees.
Yes,
Right,
exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Does somebody
So-
want to second that?
Don't she, well, yeah. okay.
I was the second, so I will agree to that amendment. And Mr. Patton, do you agree? Okay, so. that
So who
motion
made
is-
the motion? Sarah?
yeah.
And second?
It was an friendly amendment,
Okay,
so we
okay.
both accepted it.
Okay, thank you.
Is there further discussion?
Just, can you make sure that we state the,
Yes, so the
Motion
motion on the
clearly for the
table
public.
is to reduce by an additional 3 teachers. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Let's do a roll call, please.
Ms. Boucher?
We're roll calling the same vote, because
So you have to vote?
yes or no?
No. Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Cotton?
Yes.
Ms. Hastings?
No.
Ms. Higgins?
No.
Mr. Richards?
yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Walsh?
Yes.
And I am a no. It is 5-4. That motion passes.
Further motions?
What's left?
Well,
Well,
whatever you.
Whatever you want.
I feel like this is a flurry
Whatever
of,
you want.
of activity here.
Would it be appropriate to make a motion to adjourn for about 10 minutes and see if we can
Or move to
get some-
recess?
Or recess.
sort of-
Recess.
yeah, recess.
Can you do the figures up?
Oh, I'm ready.
You're ready now?
Yeah.
You're ready?
Go for it.
I think the only.
The drive-in's open.
All right, Jack, here we go. See,
Somebody want
Magic Man Jack done.
Yeah.
Show us what you got.
So the local rate would be 42 cents at 3.09. The state, oh yeah.
Yeah.
The state, yeah, this isn't the prettiest thing, but this is.
That's all right.
Yeah, you can't
You know.
just, I'm a community
See if you can
organizer,
read it.
Jack. I don't do math.
So it'd be 3.09 on the local rate. Obviously, the
That's
state
true.
I cannot control, but the net is 2.9. And that would be
yeah.
adding the world language, adding the floater nurse, removing the SRO, adding the math interventionist, and not hiring 3 vacancies. Do I have all that right?
We don't really need it if we're gonna take teachers.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, do I need to, am I missing something?
Nope,
Oh,
not
you
at all.
mean- You just wanna see the FTE? Oh, I got you, yeah, sorry. If I'm making people dizzy, I apologize. I don't know if I can close
So,
that out or not.
The budget
Anyway.
is 98,000 less than we had originally.
Oh, the net result?
Net result.
Yeah, 98, yeah, 98,440, isn't that ironic?
Yeah, I mean, all things,
3
And we'll
added.
go,
Yeah,
yeah.
3
three
down.
take down.
Yep, 3 down,
Yeah.
and then
then-
we stay on the SRO.
yeah. You look
What were the
pensive
3
there.
up?
The
Nurse,
nurse.
language, and,
Language.
Interventionist.
Oh, interventionist.
I mean, that's right within the area that we kind of vocally said we would feel comfortable, like within that 3%.
Yeah, well, I want to say that inflation this year past year is 3.4%. I mean, that's the cost of all of our, everything going up. Only what has affected so many other districts is, and even affects us, is that healthcare, that benefit has gone up 9.7%.
Yeah.
We're actually a little better. Many other districts had 11, 12, 15.
22. We're
Yeah,
moving,
much higher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I would like to, I want to commend the district on their management of our healthcare over this past year and the continuing years that have been done, because that's a real potential issue, and we need to stay on top of it, but I'm comfortable with this. So-
Mr. Dunn, could you just show the percentage increase in the actual budget? I think that's
The one that's posted?
not
No.
not in the
That-
valuation, not in what the tax
just
rate
what the
would.
percent of the amount is.
Yes.
Our budget went up 1.67%
Yes.
before we did all these things.
And then when you take the one time, you're down 0.84.
Yeah, but I don't want to take the one
Yeah,
time. I
so-
want to be tougher and make it the 1.67, thank you. But
Oh, sure.
But if
where are
you-
we now?
Where are we now is the question, yeah.
Let's see
Give you a minute.
if I have that.
I only slightly understand the question.
The
1.58.
1.58. That's how much the budget is actually growing.
Yeah.
The
Gotcha.
impact on the tax rate is
Gonna be different.
different,
It's a
but,
different set of numbers.
but the budget is 1.58%. And I agree. Thank you, Mr. Dunn and Superintendent, for your work managing some of those costs and some of those cost spikes. And we got to spend some time this year figuring out how to deal with transportation.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I know.
Batter up.
We'd like to come back to you with some proposals around the transportation, especially as it relates to our small vehicles and at that homeless and the special ed, where we're really, this morning I spent time with other superintendents. That was a huge issue in all of their districts. They're getting absolutely hammered. And my neighbor next door, Auburn, it was special ed transportation. Their budget is overexpended this year by $800,000. Yeah, and they're devastated, so, but again, that, and I'd also like to be able to reflect on the recommendations that were made in 2021 on the SRO. I'm not doing it tonight, but I did ask Pam if I could do that presentation, because you've done so much in that area, but we don't always think about it when you brought in social workers and you brought in the grants that bring in our community helpers, whether it's NAMI or whether it's Riverbend. So I'd like to be able to talk about those things, because you have done a lot in that area, although it might not be as public as we had hoped it should be. But now with a communication person, I feel strongly that we'll hear more about that. So, anyway.
So at this point, I think we let the budget sit with us for a day and a half.
Stew on it.
2 days, and we meet back here on Wednesday for hopefully what will be a relatively short meeting after all the time we have delightfully spent together over the past 2 months. Is there any other business that people have? If not, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Robinson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Boucher. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And let's all wish Ms. Hastings a happy birthday! Happy birthday! Thank you for spending it with us.
Yes, it was wonderful.
I think I spent my birthday with you too, so.
That's good.
Oh, man.
Well, last year in the